Good afternoon, everyone. It's 3:04. We have a quorum. We'll call the November meeting of the Open Space Advisory Board to order. And I'll let you take over.
Time limits for information presentations. There's a 15-minute time limit for presentations with additional time granted at the discretion of the presiding officer. This limitation is applicable only to the presentation itself and does not include discussion and action elements of an item. Call to the public. Items not listed on the agenda. Members of the public will be allowed 3 minutes to present with additional time granted at the discretion of the presiding officer. And we don't have anyone signed up to speak, but if you would like to, now would be the time.
Is anyone interested in speaking at call to the public on an item that's not on the agenda? We have one. Mr. Geyer, nice to see you.
Yes, sir.
You get it?
No, seems,
Karina's coming.
They always set it up in the worst
yeah,
place.
well, you gotta make it difficult. Thanks. Okay, one item, a big item, Open Space Advisory Board, and I know there's some new people, but there is some money available to purchase property under the 2012 bond issue to the tune of, and Don, do you know, is
Off
it
the top of
about
my head, I do
3.5 million? I mean, there's a pretty good chunk of change left. And that money is sitting there, okay? And unlike other bond issues we know, you know, we're not having to go to court on this or anything. It's money that's available now. And I know that the city council, we've been told by the attorneys, has to come up with a list of properties to choose from. They could also ask you all to assist in coming up with a list of properties to choose from. There is an existing list that was prepared, and I would encourage you all to check into that and see what, you know, additional open space is available that's already been listed as priorities that could be purchased with that money. Okay, so I would hope you all would take that up however you wish to. But you know, that's one of the big purposes of this committee, is to kind of oversee that process. And I think it's like originally there was 5 million, I believe, and some money was spent, for those who don't know, on a big piece of property on the east side of the mountain, and that property's south of Hondo Pass, and there's still some more property south of that is adjacent to, which would make sense, also owned by the Knapp family. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else can call to the public? Okay, on to regular agenda, item number 1, changes to the agenda. Do we have any changes?
No changes to the agenda.
Okay. Number 2, discussion and action, approval of the minutes from the October 2nd meeting. We've all got them in front of us. Give you as much time as you want, and then I'll entertain a motion, or to make changes or entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Have a motion to accept the minutes as submitted,
I second the motion.
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Number 3, discussion and action changes to the 2020 meeting schedule.
Karina Bresgal with Planning and Inspections. And I suppose it should be potential changes. So this is when you all approved the meeting schedule for next year. Those dates were sent to the city clerks to book council chambers. There was an issue with the January 15th date. There's a conflict and it's already been booked. So the two options are either we move the meeting to a different location, or if you all are okay or would like to move the meeting to the following week. So January 22nd in this room, or we could have the meeting as scheduled on the 15th, and it would be in City 2 likely, so across the street on Campbell. And the only thing to note with that room is the setup's a little bit less ideal, and it would not be videotaped. We wouldn't have that ability there, but we'd still have the recordings available. So if the date stands, there's no action needed from you all. If you'd like to accept an alternate meeting date, that would be a motion.
And I will not be here for the 22nd, so my preference would be to stick at with the 15th, even if it's a smaller, less than ideal.
Yeah, and that's why I included the February date, because if you do have a meeting on the 22nd, it's a pretty tight
and
turnaround.
that makes it awfully tight. So I don't know if anybody has any comments. Again, if we don't make a motion or anything, then we're just sticking with the 15th of January. It'll just end up in a different place. Any comments on that? I think we're staying with the 15th.
All right, 15th's good with everybody? Great.
Okay, unrelated thing. I don't know what to do about it, but a few of us have blank monitors.
Yes.
Most of us have blank monitors, I guess.
You've got a little IT request button.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, that's fine. These two don't have a lot of information presented. So I'll go ahead and move on to item 4, though.
Okay.
And that's the quarterly report of pending OSAB motions. So that's anything that you guys have, recommendations to council, memos sent on, things like that. Regular businesses are not included in this. Don't put, approval of the minutes on there. And so in this case, there really haven't been any major motions made. These are the two regarding the former TERS 12 Northwest property to include Lost Dog Trail. The action made by the Open Space Advisory Board is considered concluded. The recommendation was made to council and presented to council. But I keep these on the list just because it is an ongoing city project, and then you guys are about to receive an update on that. So that's really all.
So those are the only ones that are
that are
still
kind
open?
of
Okay.
in process. And that's it.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Anybody? Okay. Item 5, information and discussion, an update on council action and staff recommendations made at the council meeting of October 29th, 2019 regarding the approximately 1,000 acres of land owned by the city of El Paso in northwest El Paso, including Lost Dog Trail. Kevin Smith.
Okay. Good afternoon, members of the board. Kevin Smith with Planning Inspections. I just wanted to give you a verbal update on where we're at with the item read before you. Oh, before I start, the IT is working on your issue with your screens. So, so just a little bit of quick history. In May of this year, the voters of El Paso voted to approve the preservation of the land, which is approximately 1,000 acres in northwest El Paso. It is the area I think you're all aware of as TERS 12, which is the area that is east of Wrestler, on either side of Trans Mountain, just west of the Franklin Mountains. In July of this year, City Council authorized for the El Paso Water to utilize the 10% dual-purpose stormwater open space fund for preserving that land and to leave the land in El Paso Water inventory. City Council also at that time made a motion to direct staff to, among numerous things, to explore a conservation easement, to ascertain partners, and to look at potential uses of that land. Staff provided that in October of just a couple of weeks ago to City Council, and it was a staff recommendation at that time to establish restrictive covenants and place that on that land. City Council made a motion at that meeting, they made 3 separate requests of staff and a report back on December 10th. The first was because there are mineral rights that exist on this land, to reach out to those affected entities, which are Texaco and the state of Texas, to the motion said to better define their mineral rights and acceptable usage. So that was one request from City Council. The second is to further research into other Texas cities. They gave the example of San Antonio and other experts for best practices for establishing a conservation easement and other preservation methods. So that was the second request that they gave. And the third was to research best practices for setting up an RFP for third-party conservation easement holders based upon research along with the definition of natural open space found in our city code. So staff is currently pursuing all these requests from City Council. And so we're in process of doing that. And then City Council asked that we report back to them on December 10th. So the presentation as well as the video is available on the city website. If you go to the October 29th City Council meeting, there's a presentation that's on there, as well as if you want to watch the video as well. And right now staff is pursuing the request of City Council. And so that's basically where we're at right now. And be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Was TERS 12 rescinded?
Yes, I'm sorry. That was another update. Is TERS 12 was rescinded on actually that same day, October 29th. So that is removed right now. So that is one additional action that City Council did take on that day.
Okay. More questions?
So as we continue along the process, we'd be happy to provide further updates as
Thank
they
you.
become available.
And I do have a couple questions. With regard to the mineral rights, I guess those, even if that land had been sold, those mineral rights were already there. So to me, in some way, I don't know what the issue is, because there's probably mineral rights owned on a lot of property. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm assuming that's probably not a very big deal. But I don't know.
It's when the ballot language came, it said to preserve the land in its natural state. Let me see what it said. Yeah, to preserve in its natural state for all time the land. And so the way that the state code under conservation easements, Natural Resource Code 183 states that any existing rights that exist, which include easements, mineral rights, those have to be honored. Okay? So just because they're there, I mean, it's up to the entity to determine if they want to exercise those rights. And so one of the things that council asks is if we can reach out to those two entities to better define their interest in the land.
Okay. I've heard from some user groups or people interested in that land about the issue of trails that are out there and what happens in the future. And I think that going forward, this I guess is maybe just a comment on usage or how things are written up, is I don't know that we would want to say that no new trails can be done or trails can't be fixed. I think we need to be careful there about what happens going forward. That one group that came forward, there's some people who have come forward and said it would be great to have a trail that's for kids. So maybe a mountain bike trail, and some of the lower areas of theirs that's within that boundary, there's land where a trail could be put in that even very young kids could use. And where we're not, I don't think very many people are looking for a great big new network of trails. We also don't want to set ourselves up in a position where nothing can be done out there. So going forward, I think, to me, that's where you come up with a system where there's vetting of anything that happens out there so it's done properly.
Yeah, and I think, along with that, once council gives us direction whether to pursue a conservation easement or another method, the next step would be to determine potential uses and what to do out there. I'm not at liberty to say right now what it is or is not appropriate, whether leave the existing or not. We'll have to get that direction.
To me, I think just going forward, we have to have a process that we can make, wise decisions on, how much or how little happens out there. But saying nothing that, you know, that the existing trails as they are, is all that's out there, is probably not the best way to go. And part of that is even just comes down to the fact that some of those trails that who knows even who built them are not very well designed and are leading to erosion that, you know, without some repair or some remediation and getting the trail to go someplace where we're potentially damaging the land worse. So I think we just need to have a good process on how to do that. Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, also, if I may, I believe that a couple members of the public are here to speak
Okay,
on this item.
Public. Mr. Geyer.
Barb Geyer. This will probably be my last time today, so. Concerning the mineral rights, I'm concerned about that, or I just want to alert everybody. When you have mineral rights to the property, you're talking about underground or on top of the ground, but two examples are the state of Texas had the mineral rights to the land called Hit Canyon in the northeast, and Job is now leasing that, Job Construction. They're leasing that property, and there's a quarry out there, okay? They're leasing the mineral rights. On the west side, there's an area, and if you go, if you take the state park and you climb all the way up the mountain, hill, whatever, to the west, and you look at the top and you can see another quarry being constructed. That's probably a real close view. You can also see it from I-10. The state owns that land, but they're also leasing that to Job, who has started a quarry. So there is a potential, and the two property owners, I mean, the two people who have the mineral rights in the Lost Dog Trail area are the Texaco and the state of Texas. So I just hope something like that doesn't happen. It sounds like it probably won't, according to Mr. Smith, but that just needs to be watched. I mean, they could do something like that. And with the power that Stanley Job has in this community, it needs to, and the donations he makes, we need to be careful about that, because I'd sure hate for any quarrying to be done up there. I mean, the one on the west side is getting bigger and bigger, and you know what the McElligan Canyon quarry looks like. So let's not let that spread in that area or go to that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Marilyn.
Hi, good afternoon, Marilyn Guida speaking. Yeah, I wanted to mention, it's just, I was at the several city council meetings on this issue of Lost Dog and the ballot and the development plans and all of that. So it's been several years. And it was only until the conservation easement really became a potential, serious potential, that the notion of the mineral rights was brought forward by the staff. And, so I was tracking that whole process of all these different staff development plans for that area, and even when it was in El Paso Water hands, there was a different development plan. Never any mention of mineral rights, never any thinking of, well, if there's something under there, how are the people who hold those rights going to access it? What's impact is it going to have on those plans? Now the plans are gone, but all of a sudden we're discussing mineral rights, and I'm just saying, wow, where did this come from? Why has it appeared now? Why didn't it appear earlier when it would have been a major factor? I would think if it's a major factor now, why wouldn't it have been a major factor when all these development plans were being developed? So that's a puzzlement. Going back to the King and I. And then I wanted to follow up on Don's point about the trails. Some of the trails may be causing erosion or being laid out in such a way to cause erosion. obviously, open space is about preserving the natural environment, so there's plants and animals, and there also could be archaeological resources out there. There's never been a survey that I've actually tried to find out from different people, and I couldn't find anything. So trails might impact archaeological sites on the surface, but then if erosion is starting to happen because the trails aren't properly placed, then that's going to increase erosion. And I happen to know this week that the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department is working at Waco Tanks this week, excavating certain features that were starting to be exposed by erosion. So this is a real issue. It's just that we don't know, and I don't know how we could get a handle on whether there are any archaeological sites on the Lost Dog area. But that's quite a big area. The issue of whether there's endangered or threatened species there versus just just the regular species, if we could put it that way, is requires really a wildlife specialist to address as to how that area might be used by different wildlife. Some wildlife, like deer, need to roam a large area, as you probably all know, in order to access food, and just that's the nature of their behavior. And the same with birds and a lot of other creatures. They have a fairly large territory. Other kinds of creatures would have a very small territory. So all of these issues are really hard to define. I mean, nobody will know unless the biologists go out and do that work. And we can understand the interrelationships and ecological relationships of the plants and animals out there, and what it takes. Because now that this is sort of, it has been and is now, the citizens have said we want this to stay natural. It doesn't mean that we can just walk away from it. Particularly because the trails are there, and there are going to be more use of the trails and more access to the trails now that it's happily gotten good publicity. So I think we have a responsibility as the public government to manage that situation. So that's in your hands, guys. I'm just bringing that to your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comments? I guess not, since I think you are the two public. Thank you. Okay. We'll go on to item 6. Information, discussion, and action. Update on status of the Mountain to River Trail System, including stakeholder and public input meetings, natural trail route, and prioritization of efforts needed to complete the trail. Daniel Lopez. Hi, Daniel.
Good afternoon, Board Chair. Let's see. All right. Well, I'm here to update you on the Mountain to River Trail. As we know, the Mountain to River Trail is an east-west multi-use trail linking Franklin Mountain State Park in northwest El Paso to the Rio Grande River in Upper Valley. So here's our goals: enhance non-motorized trail access and improve trail connections among diverse land uses, including existing paved trails and systems. Our guiding principles are user experience, constructability, safety, economic benefits, connectivity, wayfinding, cost effectiveness, and maintainability. And of course, it's funded by the 2012 Quality of Life Bond and stakeholder contributions. So our Mountain to River Trail, the trail route alternatives have been identified and evaluated. We recently had a review of the alignment, typical cross sections, preliminary estimates, and best practices, and it has been completed. It's been determined that the improvements will be performed using existing paths and providing connections, filling gaps, and wayfinding to provide a safer route through the Mountain to River Trail. With the emphasis on the filling the gaps, additional time is going to be needed for the consultant to complete the conceptual design. So with that, we're looking at the revised conceptual design to be submitted mid-November 2019. Our next steps is preliminary design phase coordination meeting with the stakeholders. We're looking into December 2019 for that one. Once we get a date, establish a date, we will share that with you. And we're also looking at an open house community meeting in January 2020. And we're also going to be developing funding land user agreements with the project stakeholders and finalize design, initiate improvements for connectivity and wayfinding. That's all I have for right now. Thank you. Do you have any
Thanks.
questions?
Questions?
You have a tentative route?
Yes, let me go back.
I think the first slide had something on it.
Oops, I think let's see. So this is the conceptual alignment right now. Let me explain that the solid red lines represent future improvements. The dotted red lines are the existing pathways right now. And the green solid lines are the pathways the connections that we're looking at for the current funding.
Do any of those, where are your gaps? Where,
The gaps would be on the green. We're looking for safer routes.
Oh,
Some of those trails exist though on the, closer to the river, don't they? Through the properties that are.
Yes, there are existing trails. Such as the Sunset Terrace Trail.
So basically, anything that's not dotted doesn't exist. I mean, there might be a roadway or something.
And it'll need some further improvements. A lot of them are with TxDOT.
But the plan right now is, I guess, tell me, correct me when I'm wrong, but is to work on the area by the outlet mall, which is where the higher green area is right getting under I-10 and over to Spur, wherever it is.
It's through the I-10, finding a safer route crossing I-10.
And then the lower green is going through some neighborhoods, connecting a little bit of existing pathways with, and then getting down to the river.
Correct. Through Borderland.
Right, on Borderland.
Mm-hmm.
so that's as an alternate to the solid red that already exists, or in addition to?
The solid red towards the Donovan corridor is, so that's TxDOT right away.
Oh.
So there's a corridor study on that.
If I may, so what you have here is, there's a paved path along the side of that Spur highway. I can't remember the number of the Spur.
Spur 16. Mm-hmm.
That comes as far as oh, wait a minute.
It,
It comes as far as what's Rubakov,
well, actually, it goes a little further than that, but our connecting point would be Isela Rubacava.
and where it someday maybe this part happens, there's a lot of issues with TxDOT and that sort of thing. It might take a while to get that done. So this route may be able to happen more quickly because there's already some pieces of pathway in existence, and it's not state highway.
Okay.
Right, it's a safer route.
Have to be
Gotcha.
involved. And then this is kind of the tougher one, just because you got to get under I-10 and
Yeah.
through some commercial areas. But there's potentially space to do it, and maybe not working so quickly on some of the dirt stuff in the park because there's already a paved trail along the side of 375.
Thank you.
Sorry, and the community meeting is scheduled for January?
We're shooting for January. It hasn't been scheduled yet. As soon as the conceptual alignment gets, finalized and everything, then we look into. Then we have to go through another department to schedule a community meeting.
And how are the announcements made to the adjacent community or neighborhood?
I believe there's. They use the website. I think they mail out letters,
Okay.
things like that, things that way.
As far as updates go, don't want to make you come every time to our meetings. So I think we just want to stay in touch and see where we go on, maybe there's nothing in December, but if you feel like you have anything to tell us in December,
Okay.
we would love to know it. But and that's going to be more like stakeholder things, and maybe even who knows about January. But we want to help, and we don't want this to slip. So
Sounds good.
Stay in touch, and we'll see when we need to get back on there.
Will
And
do.
we definitely want to try to come to any public meetings, any stakeholder meetings.
And we'll
or
keep you
some-
updated.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
No.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. You have a very good evening.
Two. Item 7, information and discussion, financial report on available open space quality of life bond revenue to include available funds and any outstanding commitments.
Good afternoon, Board. George Acosta with the Real Estate Office. This is essentially the same plan that the same spreadsheet that I showed you last month, but it'll make a little bit more sense once we discuss the executive item. The numbers are unchanged from last time. We have a little bit over 3 million still in your budget, and so that's all I have for now.
Okay. Thank you. So then, this is maybe my first time talking about going into closed session, so I don't know what to do.
Really quick, I think there was a member of the public who wanted to speak, or did you want to do it when we come back?
Does anybody want to speak now from
Did
the
you wanna talk or
public,
no?
or we're probably going to closed session?
You said maybe, so either one of you.
I thought you said you weren't
I
going to talk to
promise-
us anymore.
I changed my name. This is what I was talking about earlier. There's over $3 million left. I guess my question will be, what is the next process to make sure that those funds are spent on purchasing open space? Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Marilyn, did you have something to say?
You don't have to.
Marilyn Guida again. I thought there was going to be some words involved here, more than like less than a minute's worth, so that I could, and of course, from where I was sitting, I couldn't really see the slide. So it's hard to make a comment, except to say, sort of echo what Bob said at the beginning of, if we have funds there, let's start deciding how to make use of them, because land only gets more expensive, as we all know. And but yet at the same time, I know there's many priorities, maybe more showing up than I'm aware of, so there are tough decisions to be made. So I thank you all for being diligent about this.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
All right.
So do I read this now? Is that what happens?
Now what you guys would do would be, somebody would need to make a motion to go into closed session.
I move we go into closed session.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to go into closed session. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
You're doing good.
So proud of
I'm an outdoor dog. Never an indoor dog.
And we like it that way.
Well,
first
if nothing
closed
else,
session.
I think I'm for sure meetings. I'm not good.
I
I'm
think
not
that's
good when
okay,
they last.
that just means they're efficient and productive.
No, it may just mean you're short. I don't know.
What does this mean?
We get to go and look at this.
Oh, okay.
about this hike and bike trail and just what's planned.
Okay,
So we should know what's going on with that too.
so this is the one that the Paso
The
del
one
Norte
that goes
group is
from the
working.
county line to county line,
Mhm.
yeah, the whole thing.
Okay,
And I know there are people that can talk about that.
okay.
I don't know who they are right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, because there's stuff even coming off, there's a lot of easements they're using, a lot of electrical easements.
Okay.
So that's the Paso del Norte group, right?
Yeah,
That one?
Jorge has a lot of information on that.
So what does that fall under, the Parks and Rec, like board?
I know Parks and Rec is working on some of it,
Okay.
and then I think stuff like further east falls into county, so county is working on that. Also stuff closer to Anthony, but most of it is connected to Anthony at this point.
Okay.
Where you know,
Rebecca
City of El Paso
Nice
stops,
tour
and county stops in regards to the way they maintain it.
Mm-hmm.
Jorge would be able to give you more information on that.
Well, you know what, I'm open,
But as
I'm
far as I
also
know,
desperate to
all
get
the
out
stuff
there, and this is
on
the
the west
first
side is
season that I
not gonna
haven't
be
hiked
close to the
because